Everybody, what's good? Welcome into the Coach and Company podcast. We do this only 20 to 30 minutes every single weekday to support the morning show. If you miss any of it on Stadium, you can catch the entire show on demand, or you can catch this audio in our relationship with Believe. Now, this is the time of year where we absolutely love what we get to do. By the way, if you're brand new, I know it's a holiday week. I am the coach, and I navigate all of these ships here at the brand. And today we have 5 different shows, if you include this one. We are big in the pro wrestling world, too. If you like pro wrestling, we've got 2 shows for you coming up on SiriusXM, channel 156, today from 2 to 4 Eastern time. It is Off the Ropes with me. And then at 5 p.m. Eastern time, I am with the greatest writer in the history of the business, Vince Russo, as we break down the business of pro wrestling and finding out The Rock, God bless him, $80 million he's been paid since coming back to join the board of TKO. And then tonight, it's a big-time Monday Night Football game. The 49ers traveling to the Colts. 44-year-old Philip Rivers getting a second start, and the Colts have no room for error. When you look at the records right now in the AFC, it is, let me pull it up real quick for you. So the AFC, here's what it looks like. So Indianapolis is 8-6. They're not going to win their division because Jacksonville's 11-4, and they're just really, really good right now. But the Indianapolis Colts are just one back of Houston, so they need to win to go to 9-6. And then their last 2 games are against Jacksonville and Houston. So this is what I love about the NFL and how they do their schedules now. But if you were Indianapolis and you looked at your last 3 games and you saw 49ers, Jags, and Texans, at first glance prior to the season, you'd be like, oh, okay, 49ers clearly the toughest game. Not so much anymore, but it is divisional games. And that's exactly what we want. We want these games that matter within the division, so then we can see who ultimately will make the playoffs. On the other side, San Francisco, they got into the playoffs without even playing on Sunday. So now we know for sure that 3, and it's very difficult to do, but 3 NFC West teams will be in the postseason: the Seahawks, the Rams, and the 49ers. We just don't know who's going to have the number 1 seed and who's going to have home field. That is yet to be determined. All right, so we normally do 3 or 4 topics. I want to start with basically Friday and Saturday, the college football playoff, because there was on social media, and I try not to put too much stock in it because most of it is obviously fan-based. I try to go to voices and people that are in the business that do shows every day that actually watch the games and study the games, because it's very easy to do things from a fan standpoint. I want to do it from an educated standpoint. No shade intended. And when you look at the 4 games, you had Alabama and Oklahoma. It just made sense that they had their own night on Friday. You had Alabama, who everybody said if there was one team that didn't deserve to get in, it was Alabama with 3 losses. Well, that proved to be incorrect. They go down 17-0. And I've been a big Sooner fan. But sometimes you get exposed as a head coach. And Oklahoma has a defensive-minded head coach. And I'm not saying they could have done anything differently, but they were outscored 34-7 after going up 17-0 at home. So Alabama, that wasn't the argument. That was far from the argument. But I do agree, Notre Dame should have gotten in. Texas probably should have gotten in. Vanderbilt probably should have gotten in. Even BYU probably should have gotten in over James Madison and Tulane. And that's kind of where the argument lies right now. Because I think, as somebody who played college basketball, and I've been doing this for over a quarter century since I got out of college, and I'm going off of history. I'm not going off of how I feel. And historically, in the NCAA basketball tournament that has 64 teams, that every conference gets a team in, and the first 2 days are incredibly fun. You get some upsets. You have some teams that beat some higher seeds. It's fun. But by the time you get to the second weekend, it is pretty much chalk. Why? Because better teams, stronger teams, the more games you give them, the better the odds that they're going to advance. If you just have a one-off game, okay. Football is not that. And I think the committee needs to understand that. I think coaches need to understand that. And it's not criticizing. I played at a lower level. It doesn't take away from my college experience. And if you and I saw Joel Klatt, I thought he had the best suggestion of anybody that I've seen across social media, because the groups of five still deserve to get a payday. And let's be honest, is James Madison or Tulane upset that they lost? No, because they expected to lose. These coaches, look at John Sumrall. He's a head coach at Tulane. He's going to go to Florida. He's the best person to weigh in on this topic. He's going from a group of five to a power four. And he said, listen, I love the fact that I got to coach the team that I got to coach. He would not directly say, no, my team did not deserve to be here. He did say we deserved it over the ACC champion, Duke, because we beat them. Well, Duke didn't deserve to be there. And that in lies the argument. So I think what Joe Klatt said was, if this is really about the payday, and if you're the athletic directors for Tulane or JMU, you're ecstatic today because you got millions of dollars to put into your back pocket to help the program because you got into it. Why can we not have a secondary playoff, so to speak? You could have 4 or 8 of the top group of fives. They play 3 games after the season is over, and the champion gets that same payday that they would get. You could get a sponsor to do that. Say it's $5 million. The group of 5 playoff brought to you by Coke, brought to you by Dell. I don't know, brought to you by Amazon. And so they get the exact same payday, and they get to play in a competitive game, and they get to celebrate that payday instead of being a sacrificial lamb. The college football, my goodness, my allergies are kicking today. I apologize. College football playoff was not meant to make Division I teams sacrificial lambs like you see when an Alabama will play a small Division I AA and pay them $1 million to come and play at their place. Those games have pretty much become obsolete because of the playoff. And those teams need to put in a really, really good game. Now, Notre Dame might argue that because Notre Dame played Miami to start the season. Now, the rest of their schedule is not very strong. But you've got to be like Texas. But as soon as you say that, Texas played Ohio State. They only lost by a touchdown. But how much did that loss hurt them at the end of the season? That in lies the question. So I think they need to overhaul this whole thing. I think the group of 5 needs to be out. You got to be a power 4 team to get into the playoffs. I just believe that. And then you've got the other playoffs, and it'll be all good. So now as we look forward to the next round, which is going to be pretty much around New Year's Day. Let me look at it real quick. I think all the games are on New Year's Day. Let's go down to here. So, so actually December 31st, New Year's Eve, you've got Miami, Ohio State at 7:30, and then you've got Oregon, Texas Tech on New Year's Day at noon, and then you've got Alabama, Indiana at 4, and then you've got at 8 o'clock Ole Miss in Georgia, and that's exactly how I would have laid the games out. On New Year's Day, you got to have the best matchup be the late game. And some could argue that Alabama, Indiana will be the best game. I think Ole Miss and Georgia will be the best game with the best storylines as well. And, oh, by the way, Lane Kiffin, he got $250,000 to sit in Baton Rouge over the weekend because his agent, Jimmy Sexton, negotiated into his LSU salary that he gets paid for playoff games that he missed by taking that LSU job. So he makes $250,000 not to coach his team in the playoffs. Now, the good part about that was Pete Golding might be my new favorite coach. There's a lot of ways to handle that entire situation. The way Lane Kiffin handled it, and then the right way. And Pete Golding, who is a lifer, he is a lifetime coordinator. And he gets an opportunity to become I thought it was going to be interim. I think it's permanent, and it will be permanent moving forward. And because the team and the coaching staff likes him so much, Charlie Weiss Jr., who is going to LSU, he came back to coach the bowl game. And they scored 41 points with him as the offensive coordinator. What was the first thing that Pete Golding said in his press conference? Well, he didn't take a direct shot at Lane Kiffin, but what he did do is say, I was not worried about Charlie Weiss calling a good game. He couldn't afford not to call a good game. Why did he say that? Because Charlie Weis was kind of becoming the forgotten guy. He's the coach that did get onto the airplane because Lane Kiffin threatened them, and if they didn't, they wouldn't be on his coaching staff. And as a coordinator, I have no issues with them going to LSU. None. Because you don't know if Ole Miss is going to keep you. And LSU is putting a lot of money into those assistant coaches. A lot. I think he's going to make $2-3 million to be the offensive coordinator, which it hasn't been that long where college assistants did make over $1 million. I can remember when Nick Saban got all of his staff, including the strength and conditioning coach, to over $1 million at Alabama. That was a really big deal. Now, having those coordinators taken care of, that's a big deal. And now we know that Charlie Weis is the guy because they just scored 41, and that's why Lane Kiffin wanted him so badly to go with him to LSU. So they had a 10-point lead on Georgia in the regular season, and then Georgia blew their doors off in the fourth quarter and ended up winning that game. So now how does Ole Miss in the rematch stack up? Well, to me, you've got a quarterback who is going to go into the portal. Makes no sense. I'm tired of these players going into the portal and only to become a leverage situation to get a bigger paycheck to then go back to the same team where they came from. I don't want to hear you say that Ole Miss gave you an opportunity after a Division II program, Ferris State, and then you're going to try and leverage them because he just got a 6th or maybe 7th year of eligibility. I think 6th. But this kid should be thanking his lucky stars that Ole Miss gave him that opportunity. Stay there, play it out next year, and have a really great story and play with your teammates. So I think if I'm looking at those 4 games, probably the best game, like the most fun, competitive game, I think is going to be Alabama and Indiana. But I think it's a great lineup. I think we have the 8 best teams that we could have had. And you take the argument out of Notre Dame, BYU, and Vanderbilt and Texas. And if I would have told you these are the 8 teams in an 18 playoff, you would have been happy with it. You would have been happy with it. All right, you are listening or watching the Coach and Company podcast. We're here most weekdays to support the morning show. Now, let's flip it over to what I'm calling the best NFL weekend of the entire year. I mean, it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And this is why the NFL is king. This is why the NFL will always be king. And you started Thursday night. Rams Seahawks battle not just for first place in the NFC West, but battle for the number 1 seed. And you have a 38-37 final. And you had probably the most insane 2-point conversion ever to tie the game. And then you had a 2-point conversion to win the game in overtime. And I saw so many people say, why wouldn't you play for the tie? Why would you potentially have a loss? They're already going to the playoffs. But the tiebreakers were such that if they would have played for a tie, that would have severely favored the Rams, not the Seahawks. So that's when you come in prepared. That's when you come in and you say, would a tie help us? Well, clearly the coaching staff knew that it would not because they did not hesitate. It was score, 2-point conversion after Puka Nacua had scored the go-ahead in their first possession. And now with the new rules, I absolutely love it because otherwise the game would have been over after the Puka touchdown. So there was no hesitation. They called a timeout. They knew exactly the play they were going to run. The tight end blocking, and then he just goes to the middle. Nobody's paying attention to him. And those are the 2-point conversions that you work on all year for that one spot, for that one opportunity that you have to have the 2-point conversion. And they did it. So now when you look at the standings, you have Seattle as the number 1 seed at 12-3. You've got the Rams at 11-4, and then the 49ers at 10-4, and they play tonight. Now, the Rams, who've been in position all season long, what do they finish with? Well, they go to Atlanta, and then they have Arizona. So no divisional games in their final 2. Advantage. Seattle, they must go to Carolina, which prior to the season would have been awesome. Carolina's in first place in the NFC South. So Seattle goes to Carolina and to San Francisco. So the Rams are still very much alive for that top seed in the West. And then elsewhere, let's not sleep on Chicago because Rams Seahawks had the game of the year for about 48 hours until we got to Packers Bears on Saturday night. And sometimes you have to look at it, guys, and say they are a team of destiny. They're just a team that no matter what happens, they're figuring out a way. You look at all of their games this year, and the Bears, they certainly have not been dominant by any stretch of the imagination. But the way they won on Saturday night, if that doesn't, as a Bears fan, make you feel like maybe they're a team of destiny, I don't know what does. And I don't know what would. You're down 16-6 late in the fourth quarter. You kick a field goal with basically 2 minutes to go. The only shot you have is to convert an onside kick, which are never converted because you have to tell the other team that you're doing it now with these new kickoff rules. You can't fake one ever. You either do it or you don't. They did it and they recovered. And with Jordan Love on the sidelines, injured, hit in the head, Packers fans. 1 second. If you look at it, then they score a touchdown 16-6 or 16-16. And then there's a fumble in overtime. And then Caleb Williams throws an absolute dime to DJ Moore, showing why he's going to be their franchise quarterback. Those are the moments in a franchise turnaround that you look back to. The onside kick, yes, but it's that throw to DJ Moore, the guy that came over from Carolina, got the big payday, been frustrated for a couple of years, and now he becomes the number one guy. That's the NFL and the beauty of it. The beauty of it. Now, that was Saturday night. So then as we go into, hold on, my goodness. Sorry, my daughter's traveling right now and she is looking for this. Okay, let me send this to her. Come on. Sorry, guys. Well, this is the beauty of being a dad. Okay, here we go. Okay. Traveling for the holidays. So now we move to Sunday. And Sunday was the early games, they stunk. Nothing really happened. You had Philly won on Saturday, so they improved. And then Carolina did beat Tampa, but that was just a terrible game. We get to the late games on Sunday. And I've been saying this for a minute, that sometimes when there's so much positivity around a coach, we lose track of what the ultimate goal is. And the ultimate goal for any coach to come in is to turn your team around and to go to the playoffs. When you get to the playoffs, get to the Super Bowl. When you get to the Super Bowl, you win. If you're not trying to do that, then what's the point? There are a lot of franchises, Dallas Cowboys being one, are more worried about how much they're worth than they are winning a Super Bowl, like they did in the 90s multiple times. So if you're the Detroit Lions, I love Applebee's. I love Dan Campbell. I love him as I get to watch fun videos from the locker room. But yet, when was the last time we saw one of those fun videos? When was the last time he said, gentlemen, today we took a step forward. No, they haven't happened. Why? Because they're 8-7. Why? Because multiple times this year, the way that he coaches has proven it's not the right way. And I'm the least conservative guy on planet Earth. But there's a way to coach in the NFL. There's a way to coach as an NFL head coach. You can't always go for it on fourth down. Sometimes punting it and holding a team inside the 10 is the way to go. Kicking a field goal. We saw a game 3 or 4 weeks ago where he left legitimately less than 40-yard field goals, 3 of them in one game. That's 9 points. Analytics. Yes, but he coaches from the gut. You got to put the two together. So now all those fans, all those players that love Dan Campbell, they're 8-7. they're not going to the playoffs. Mathematically, yes, are they still alive? Sure they are. And if you look at the NFC, they are in the 4th spot. Green Bay's 9-5. So they're 2 back of Green Bay. It would take everything. So many moving parts for Detroit in. So let's assume they're not going. What does that offseason look like? And was there a little bit of poetic justice that the guy in the AFC that's been talked about, hey, has his time run its course, Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh? All of a sudden, the Steelers are winning these close games. All of a sudden, the Steelers go to Baltimore and they win. Now, a little bit of controversy at the end of that game as Isaiah Likely had the ball, 2 steps, knocks it out. They call it no touchdown. So what happened yesterday? Same Steelers team, offensive pass interference, game-winning touchdown. But they had 2 of those. Dan Campbell's calling the plays. And when you have a receiver, it was one of those where, the outside guy goes, supposed to pivot, and this guy rubs off. Well, the rub happened. Amon-Ra St. Brown was all by himself because the first receiver ran right into the defender. Didn't even try to avoid him. If you're going to run those plays, you got to practice them, and you got to tell that receiver exactly how to do it. So then they run another play, another offensive pass interference, this time on Amon-Ra St. Brown. But he flipped it back to Goff, who ran it in for a touchdown, zeros on the clock. By rule, offensive pass interference, they don't even have to accept it. The game's over. So now the Lions, in a nutshell, inside of 2 minutes, after a Steelers missed field goal, kept them only down by 5. And all of that happened to them to not win the game. Lions fans are pissed. That last 2 minutes took damn near an hour to play. The last play, the refs stood there and talked about it for 3 minutes. Nobody knew what was going on. But ultimately, they were a good refereeing crew, and they figured it out. They knew the rule book. But if you're the Lions, you don't give a damn about the rule book. You give a damn about the fact that you're 8-7, and your head coach is a big reason why. Mike Tomlin, he might have saved his job this year. Over 20 years at the helm, he's the coach that everybody says, he's never finished lower than 500 in any season. That cannot be a narrative if you coach one of the blue bloods. Steelers, Packers, Cowboys. It's got to be better than that. It's got to be, how many championships have we won? How many Super Bowls have we gone to? That's not the narrative. And in 2025, that has to change. So if you're the Steelers now, look at it. You're now 9-6. You've got a 2-game lead on the Ravens. And your end of season looks like at Cleveland and then Baltimore. If they beat Cleveland next week, it doesn't matter what happens with Baltimore. Aaron Rodgers can sit his ass out. Lamar Jackson might be out. He got knocked out last night. Back injury, he couldn't play in the second half. And that was a game they 1,000% had to win. And they lose to the Patriots, who are now 12-3, a 1-game lead over Buffalo, and at the Jets, and then Miami is how New England's going to close out the season. It's going to be an interesting last 2 weeks, guys. A very, very interesting last 2 weeks. And we're going to be here every single day. We will have a show on the holidays. How long, how much, I have no idea. But we will be here. We will give you our best bets. But more importantly than that, I want all of you who are watching right now to understand, as we move into 2026, Coaching Company, Coaching Bro, Coaching Company podcast, whatever content we do out of here, it's going to be done with intensity. It's going to be done with emotion. It's not going to be all sports betting because that gets very, very mundane sometimes. It's going to be all about sports because that's what we love. And we want all of you to come along for the ride. It's going to be all about pro wrestling because that's what we love. That's how I spent more than half of my adult life in that business. And we love doing that content as well. The media space is changing, and we intend to change with it. And we want all of you to trust us, to come and have fun with us. We have a lot of big plans, but you can only do it one step at a time. It's not going to happen overnight, but we're going to do it. So thank you guys for tuning in today, for tuning in every single day. Subscribe to our Coaching Company YouTube page, at the Coach Rules on social media. Turn on your notifications. We have content literally coming out of our ears. I got to go get ready for my SiriusXM show. We'll see you today at 2 o'clock, and then later today at 5 for Coach and Bro, and then tonight for the Monday Night Grind. For producer man behind the scenes, I am the coach. We'll see you tomorrow right here on the Coaching Company podcast. Have a great day.